everyone I think kind of knows is going to eventually win a regional championships. He's just waiting for his time, and I know he hopes that this weekend is his time. Will it be him taking the crown here in Peoria?
Yeah, operating that Giratina V-Star, such a strong deck that we have seen take wins and some losses in our day one and going into day two. We did get to hear a little bit from John, so hoping to take the win here and bring that Giratina V-Star into a top 4.
And possibly the man who needs no introduction,
Very true.
Tord Relev, hailing from Norway with a list of accomplishments that...
Look at that.
I mean, yeah, what else is there to say? Top 4 at Worlds in 2019, 2018 EUIC and OCIC champion, and a North American International Championships victory back in 2017. One of the best in the history of the game, and the player that some consider the best to ever do it.
Yeah, that's a bit daunting when the achievements pop up and it's just champion, champion, champion on there. That is definitely very telling to the skill level that Tord is definitely operating at. So definitely awesome. And then, of course, the deck as well. We are going to see the Lost Box in a little bit of a different variation. We have seen Tord operate this deck on the stream already. Those one prize Pokemon, the Comfeys kind of leading the way. The Sableye as well, huge part of that deck with that Lost Mine attack too. So this is going to be a nail biter of a game. And we get to see 2 Lost Box matches.
Yes, yes. These Lost Zone decks utilizing both of them, the Comfey, flower selecting, so powerful to just get you through the deck and also fuel your Lost Zone cards. For Tord, it will be all about getting to 10 cards in the Lost Zone so that he can use Lost Mine, and also in the early turns getting to 4 so that he can use Cramorant. Over on the other side, John is really going to be trying to aim for 4 and 7 cards so that he can use his own Cramorant, but then also get to 7 so that he's able to utilize Mirage Gate, the powerful new trainer.
And then 10 for that Giratina V-Star as well. That is definitely huge for John. So really similar numbers here, of course. That's kind of how we are rolling with the Lost Box decks. They all have kind of similar numbers that they have to hit, and that is what we're going to be seeing here. So definitely going to have to keep track of these cards in the Lost Zone because it's very crucial for both players. And here's the prize cards.
Could be important stuff here. Let's see what goes down. Both bosses' orders over on John Eng's side, and his Snorlax, which is a great attacker for him. I will say, though, it is at the bottom of the prizes, so he is likely to draw it at some point. Over on Tord's side, did prize a Cramorant, does play a couple copies of the card, though, so won't be too big of a deal. That one Chorus's Experiment could be a little annoying, but really not too bad over on Tord's end.
Yeah, definitely not something that's super crucial. Could come into play there for John, definitely with those bosses orders, so we'll have to keep a lookout for that, and I'm sure it's going to be noticed very recently for John too. And here we go. We had the fist bump for our players, and we're getting into our top 8 match.
And it does look like Tord will be going first. And I do believe that most likely means that John Eng won the coin flip and chose to go second. Going second in this matchup is so good because of how easy it is to attack on the first turn going second with Cramorant. Of course, provided you can get the necessary 4 cards in the Lost Zone. But when you're going second, it's really not too hard with the power of Comfey and Chorus's Experiment.
Yeah, most definitely. If anyone is unfamiliar, Lost Provisions, if you have 4 or more cards in the Lost Zone, ignore the energy cost. So Cramorant essentially gets to attack for free pretty much, doing 110 damage at that. So not anything to blink at, that is for sure. All right, so Tord already starting off with that Comfey, scoop up net into the other Comfey as well. So already putting a couple, at least 1 card so far, and then now here's 2 into the Lost Zone, a Sableye and a Psychic Energy as well. And then that second Comfey that was scooped out before is hitting the bench again. Another Comfey scooping up out of the active. This is what we're going to see a lot with this Comfey engine. And we're going to see another flower selecting here from Tord. So flower selecting, of course, you draw 2, you keep 1, and you have to Lost Zone the other.
Yep, and it's already going to be a tough choice here. Lost Vacuum and the Air Balloon. Lost Vacuum going to the Lost Zone, though. Not too bad to lose, though. It is a nice way to help fuel your Lost Zone count so that you can get to Sableye as quickly as possible. And that's really what Tord is going to be trying to do here. Get as many cards in the Lost Zone on turn 1 as he can so that he can get to that 10 cards on turn 2 and start really applying the pressure with that Lost Mine.
I mean, Tord is going for it. That is now the 4th flower selecting we've seen seen in this turn so far. So getting access to so many cards, keeping that Battle VIP pass and lost zoning a Comfey there. Battle VIP pass, of course, so essential. Tord is going first here, so allowing him to search out 2 basic Pokemon and bench them straight away.
Yep, at 4 cards in the Lost Zone now. So he's ramping up. Cramorant would be online, of course, but he cannot attack here on his first turn. He's just really just trying to dump as many as he possibly can and wants to advance his board state as much as possible. Battle VIP pass being played here is excellent, and we'll see if it maybe fetches another Comfey. Of course, one did hit the Lost Zone. Looks like he's got that 4th copy in deck, though.
Yeah, most definitely. And this is going to be a close matchup. Do you think anybody in this match is slightly favored or unfavored, Chip?
It really, I think, favors the person who can take the first KO.
I was afraid you were going to say that, Chip.
It really favors that person. And that's not to say that whoever takes the first knockout wins, without a doubt.
That's true.
There's definitely a lot of work to be done from there. But for example, if John is the first one to take the KO, he'll be putting Tord on the back foot right away, really forcing him to kind of come up with an answer as fast as possible. But Tord has some play with cards like Sableye, where he can spread damage. He has the ability of the Radiant Charizard in the late game, which could take a key knockout on a Giratina V-Star if John ends up attacking with one. And that is actually something I'm really going to be interested to see. Is John going to try to operate this game without using his V-Star Pokemon? Will he go in just with all of the various one-prizers that he plays, or will he try to make one big V-Star to close things out?
Well, you have to imagine that John has run a lot of games against this Lost Box, because this was a pretty heavily anticipated deck coming into this tournament. So I assume that we are going to see some sort of strategy here from John that is pretty well thought out, especially potentially having played this throughout day 1 and day 2. All right, so on Tord's side, we did see those 2 Pokemon hit the bench from the Battle VIP pass, of course, one of them being the Comfey, and this is going to be our 5th flower selecting here, Chip, in our first turn for Tord. It's hard to imagine that this is still the first turn.
He's going to lose the Oranguru here, one of his favorite Pokemon, but really needs to value hanging on to the Manaphy, because Radiant Greninja on John's side can become a big threat. That's a way that John could get back into this game if Tord was ever to take the first KO, is to take multiple prizes with Radiant Greninja, doing 90 damage to 2 Pokemon. So that wave availability of Manaphy will protect these bench Pokemon from that onslaught of Radiant Greninja.
Yeah, and we do forget sometimes that Tord is playing that Radiant Charizard, and it's in hand with the Fire Energy as well. And it looks like choosing to bench it now with the Fire Energy attached.
Yeah, just go ahead and get it out of the hand. This means that once John goes to 3 prize cards, Tord can threaten a 250 damage attack. So I think it does make some sense.
Yeah,
and,
look at that board state. First turn set up for Tord
without playing a supporter as well, right?
No supporter, fully loaded bench here. 5 cards in the Lost Zone already, and it is switched over to John here to kind of catch up on this turn 1. So starting off with the concealed cards from that Radiant Greninja on the bench, drawing 2 cards here, Battle VIP Pass being one of them.
Yep. Exactly what John wants to see, and has a bunch of scoop up net in hand. I feel like it's pretty likely this turn is going to end with John attacking with Cramorant.
Oh yeah, that is definitely something we could see, which would be the ideal situation. But of course, definitely having to think out all of these turns.
Absolutely.
Definitely kind of debating what to do here. Of course, we are definitely going to see that Battle VIP Pass. Otherwise, you know, why would you keep it in hand if it's your first turn and you can use it, you know? But here we go, deciding what to bring out with that Battle VIP Pass. Of course, 2 basic Pokemon here from John. Also searching through the deck, making sure to familiarize the prize cards as well. Seeing probably now that 2 Boss's Orders are in the prize cards if John is searching for it. You know, I feel like players oftentimes have key cards that they look for on their initial search because you only have so much time. So if that is a key card, that is potentially known now from John. Yeah,
Boss is usually a card you want to be checking for. It's not really the most impactful in this matchup unless you're really wanting to go for a strategy where you KO Manaphy and then set up a Radiant Greninja play, which is something John probably will have in the back of his mind. And this is something you'll see from the best players in the game. They kind of have just a bunch of different options available to them. Keep themselves with all kinds of choices available so that there's many different routes to them coming out as the victor in a game. So one possible route does involve Boss's Orders KO and Manaphy at some point in this game.
Yeah, so seeing that those two Boss's Orders are prized is definitely essential there for sure. Okay, so here we go, grabbing those two Pokemon off of the Battle VIP pass for John and just shuffling afterward as well. Again, trying to line up the turns here for that Cramorant to pop off on John's first turn here. So definitely gonna see some flower selecting from these Comfies.
The flowers will be selected. very, very shortly, starting off with number 1. And we're looking to get to 4 cards in the Lost Zone here. He would love to find a Colress's Experiment. And Giratina V-Star hits the Lost Zone as the very first choice.
Opting for the Mirage Gate instead, definitely a choice there. All right, so we see the first Scoop Up Net, very similar to how we kind of saw Tord's deck playing out as well, using the coins to signify these abilities being used. And we're going to see a Grass Energy go into the Lost Zone.
And a Colress's Experiment was
being
the card
drawn.
kept,
That's great.
Which is the exact card John wanted to see. Now he will draw into 5 cards, gets to keep 3 of them in Lost Zone 2. So that means he'll hit that threshold of 4. Let's hope that the discard choices aren't too impactful. Drapion can be a pretty easy choice. John immediately hanging on to that Sableye, which he does play a copy of as a tech himself. That is certainly something that could come up alongside the Galarian Zigzagoon. So there, we could see some plays later from John involving Sableye, Galarian Zigzagoon, pinging a bunch of Comfies to take multi-prizes in a turn.
Yeah, there is only 1 in deck, so that is definitely a keep, easy keep there. All right, so we're going to see that second Scoop Up Net into the Comfy that was scooped up before.
Yes. Once a Pokemon comes to the hand, even though Flower Selecting says once during your turn, when it comes to your hand, that means it's pretty much a new Pokemon. So
exactly.
Into the Flower Selecting, he does find the Galarian Zigzagoon and chooses to keep it. Wants to keep that play in his back pocket potentially.
Comfies are not getting too comfy there on the board, Steve. Chip, you got to tell me to stop making this joke.
We'll let it slide this time, Boo.
All right, there we go. So we did see that Flower Selecting and the second Comfy that was scooped up earlier back onto the bench as well.
Debating using the Lost Vacuum, it would just get rid of that air balloon from Tord. It could be a little risky because it is boosting another card towards Lost Zone, but at the same time adding 1 more to John's. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's fine. And it's interesting as well, we will need to note that John has gotten rid of 2 pieces of the Giratina V-Star. So that really tells me that even though it is kind of the main function of his deck, attacking with Giratina V-Star, in this matchup, he's going to be leaning on the backs of these 1-prize Pokemon. Yeah,
it's going to be 1-prizers versus 1-prizers potentially here, which I guess is sometimes what you want to see. But here we go. That Cramorant is on the line here now for John with 6 cards in the Lost Zone. Of course, Cramorant only needing 4 to do that Spit Innocently for 110 damage and going to be able to take the first knockout of this game.
It might be innocent, but that's definitely rude. Taking out the Comfy, Spit right there, and now up to Tord to try to find the response. At 6 cards in the Lost Zone, if he can find a way to get 4 cards, we could see an attack with Sableye this turn.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be very technical on both of these players' parts. A lot of micro decisions being made, as Tord kind of noted at before, but starting off with a Flower Selecting as well. Did you see those 2 cards, Chip?
Looks like it was a Path to the Peak and a Cross Switcher, so I think Path is probably a... whoa, interesting.
Ooh,
actually going to keep it. So maybe Tord wanting to disrupt the Radiant Greninja over on John's side. I was definitely expecting that he was going to keep Cross Switcher there. I'm a little surprised. That
Tord keeping us on our feet here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we are going to see a Switch Cart now into that Comfy on the bench as well to activate another Flower Selecting ability.
And maybe what that was is that to Tord, it's not going to be super important to have access to Gusting. His main strategy is going to be spreading damage, it feels like. So doesn't really care about having access to Cross Switcher. So
more powerful to cut off your opponent. Yeah. I see. All right, so jumping into a Marnie here, activated by Tord. So Tord's going to be drawing 5 cards after putting the hand to the bottom of the deck, as well as John drawing 4. Lost Zone is at 7 cards now as well for Tord.
Yep. He is not playing the Mirage Gate, though, so, I mean, his number is really getting to that 10, and that's going to be the difficult part, and it doesn't look like it's going to be hard for him to do it. He's going to have to use 3 Comfies as he's not able to use Colress now that Marnie has been played for turn. He's bringing up Sableye. He did already attach to Comfey as well, so he actually won't be able to attack with Sableye. There's no, like, energy switch or anything like that in this deck, and Charizard is very far from being able to attack, especially with that path to the peak.
I was about to say, with the
play.
path to the
Right.
peak. Yeah, that is definitely shutting that down real quick, but we are seeing a Fog Crystal to search out that Sableye, of course, a basic Psychic Pokemon or basic Psychic Energy,
Yep.
And then a second Fog Crystal here going for the Energy.
It's actually pretty interesting that Tord has put this path in play. Oh, what he's trying to do, I get it. Okay, he's hoping to find Lost Vacuum. That's what it is. He wants to Lost Vacuum the path, put that in the Lost Zone, and then he will also ditch another card. And that would get him to 10 this turn. The problem with that, though, is he has already attached. So, I mean,
True.
It's a play that's available to him maybe a little later on that'll boost that. But, you know, it's available.
Yeah, I guess you might as well play it, seeing more value in that than the cross switcher, I suppose, as you said, Chip. So here we go. Another flower selecting ability off of that active Comfey into 2 more cards, of course, having to make that difficult decision of which to keep and which to Lost Zone into a Lost Zone of then 8 cards.
And I think the choices were Marnie and the second copy of Manaphy. That's right, Tord is playing two copies of Manaphy just because of how good Radiant Greninja can be against this deck. And it will choose to ditch a Manaphy here, bringing that Lost Zone count up to 8. Really didn't want to get rid of a supporter card, I suppose.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't see any Ordinary Rod in the list or anything like that either for any sort of other discards of Pokemon that do go to the discard pile. Of course, can't take anything out of our Lost Zone there, but Tord does play Clara in this deck, 2 copies of it that would be able to search out energy and Pokemon out of the discard pile if needed down the line.
Well, Tord's Cramorant is going to come up and take after John's on turn 1, taking this KO, tying the game up. And what Tord is probably hoping off of the Marnie here is that John is just going to stumble a little bit. This path to the peak is in play. Radiant Greninja cannot be used with concealed cards to see more options. And John has already used Lost Vacuum as well, so that's 1 less out in order to get out of this spot. Quick Ball and the Comfey here. Tough call.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that was pretty strategic here from Tord playing that path to the peak, because we could see a little bit of stutter here from John because of it, like you said, Chip. If we don't see what is needed off these flower selecting abilities, there is that much less of draw support. You know, oftentimes I think people might forget Radiant Greninja is a rule box Pokemon. So yeah, that path to peak just shutting it down right now, and John having to make a difficult decision right now off of that first flower selecting between the Quick Ball or the Comfey.
This will be the 7th card in John's Lost Zone, so now Mirage Gate will be active for him. And he's really mulling over this between a Quick Ball and the Comfey. The Comfey does inevitably hit that Lost Zone. And John's hand is a little awkward, maybe looking for a little bit more help here. 1 more flower selecting to aid him.
Yeah, let's hope that's what it does, Chip.
Yes.
You never know with these flower selectings. Looks like, is that a Roxanne and an Ordinary Rod?
Indeed.
All right, so another difficult decision, as we can see John again having to figure out, okay, what is more impactful in my strategies here? Because those are actually 2 kind of later game cards, I guess you see, and that's a tough decision to make.
And that's what makes this deck so difficult to play, is that you have to, on turn 2, make a decision that is going to impact how you play the game on turn 6.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And that is what makes it so hard, and John will end up losing the Ordinary Rod here. Wants to value the disruption potential of the Roxanne.
Yep, so Lost Zone now at 8 here. Quick balling a Water Energy out to search out a basic Pokemon here. Grabbing another Cramorant. That's going to be the attacker that we see from John. Cramorant versus Cramorant here, Chip.
Just streaming
spitting at each other.
Spitting at each other across the table.
The disrespect.
I know, truly. So as long as John has another switching card in hand, he'll be able to get into this Cramorant. He'll go back into the lead on the prize race. Doesn't have any Mirage Gates or anything like that. I think at some point he would like to, well, I guess he can't bring up the Manaphy, right? Let's not forget those 2 bosses are in the discard, or in the prize cards. If he can take one, it would be nice, and they do both still remain.
Yep, they are both in there in kind of awkward positions in the prize cards. So hopefully later down the line, John will get access to those. But yeah, taking that knockout. So 2 prize cards down for John now. Back over on Tord's side, deciding what to promote here. This is a very articulate matchup here. Of course, I don't think we mentioned it, Chip, but there is an increased timer in our top 8 matches as well. So as you can see now, there's still 57 minutes left on the clock. So plenty of time for these players to really work through these difficult decisions.
Yep, in top cut, players get 75 total minutes plus 3 turns, similarly to what they receive in Swiss. So the extended time will ensure that it's less likely a game to, have to go into the single elimination rules for time plus 3 turns, unless we do get to that 75 minutes eventually.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, so here we go. On Tord's side, we're going to see that Colress's Experiment having to keep 3 cards and Lost Zone 2 off of the top 5 of the deck. So it looks like decision might already have been made here, but just finalizing it for sure. Ooh. Opting for the 2 being the Path to the Peak, and of course a Battle VIP pass, easy one for the Lost Zone. So that takes Tord up to that 10, that lucky number 10 here to activate that powerful Sableye, and that lost mine.
Yes, we'll start to maybe spread some damage, and this could be a path for Tord, try to find a way to take multiple prizes in a single turn. Starting now with a Flower Selecting, getting to look at 2 cards. The fact of the matter here is, though, if this game just continues and John's able to stream attackers together turn after turn after turn, eventually he would come out the victor. So Tord has to find a way to disrupt that, either through another Marnie, which we know he has access to in the deck. He took it last turn.
Yeah.
So at some point he needs to play that card. At some point he needs to sneak in a multi-prize turn potentially, or just try to mess with John in some way and hope that John can maybe miss an attack. We'll see what he tries to piece together. And he does Lost Zone and Energy here. Looks like keeping the Sableye. That is a tough choice off of Flower Selecting between Sableye and the Energy. So tough.
Yeah, none of these decisions have been easy unless it's a Battle VIP that pops up. And earlier we saw 2 Battle VIPs in a different game. So that's an easy one, but none of these have been easy in this match so far. All right, we're going to see a Scoop Up Net on that Comfy that's in the active. I believe that's now 3 Scoop Up Nets played by Tord down into the discard pile.
Yep, 3 down, only 1 left for a pivoting option. Tord does play a bunch of switching cards, though. In addition to that, of course,
most of these decks do.
Yes, the escape ropes, the switching cards in Tord's list, the regular switch in John's list. So plenty of ways to maneuver your Pokemon around the field. We do see a couple copies of the Lost Vacuum in hand. So Tord wanting to leave this Past the Peak in play, I would imagine, up until the turn he wants to use Radiant Charizard. Try to force John to find a replacement stadium and reactivate his Radiant Greninja. Up until then, Tord is happy to turn off that powerful Concealed Cards ability.
I guess there is the option to bump the air balloon off of John's Comfy potentially as well, which would add to that disruption from John, but of course also adds another card to the Lost Zone for John too. But already getting to that 7 and unlocking the Mirage Gate and not playing the Giratina, I mean, John does play a Sableye, a single copy as well, so getting more cards in there would be able to activate that. But yeah, if that air balloon goes down, that's just more disruption there.
Okay, so Tord will take the KO on that Comfy and set up 4 damage counters onto the other Comfy, 1 onto the Radiant Greninja, setting up so that either of these Pokemon could be KO'd. That is unless John could find a Scoop Up Net to potentially heal one of them completely.
And we're going to see if that is found off of this Colress's Experiment, able to keep 3 cards and Lost Zone 2. Let's see. What do we got? Ooh, I did not see one.
A couple energies. Does have that Training Court. That could be a nice card to grab. But it's a tough call as what to get rid of. Losing the Lumineon is a way that you can maybe get out of some disruption from Tord in the later game. So it's a tough card to lose, but you might be okay losing it. I feel like Training Court is probably something you need to keep.
Yeah.
And John seems to agree. It's maybe a decision here between, man, I mean, it's so tough. It really is. We keep saying it, but this deck is tough to play because you just have to do so much planning. Resource management is at an all-time high when you're playing this deck.
I mean, that just emphasizes the skill level of both these players that have made it to this point so far into the top 8. I mean, this is huge right now. All of these micro decisions that they have to make, and them having succeeded this far with this super difficult deck.
Yes, absolutely. So John, I think these 3 cards are the ones he's going to keep one of and have to Lost Zone 2. So it looks like Training Court will be kept, and the Luminion and Switch do go down.
Going down there for John. So keeping those other 3 cards there, of course, like Chip said, that Training Court is now in hand. There's an Ultra Ball as well for John in hand. A ton of energy cards, looking through towards Lost Zone right now to see what is in there. Tord also taking a look at that.
So even though John has lost his boss's orders to the prize cards, there is a way that he could KO the Manaphy, and it would involve him using his Sableye in order to pick up a KO there. The risk of that is it makes it very easy for Tord to just play down a Clara, bring it back, so might not be really what John wants to go for. Maybe just try to spread some damage. If he can pull off a play with Galarian Zigzagoon at some point, that would be really, really strong alongside some scoop-up nets. But
yeah, I'm not sure if Tord, of course, these players ID'd before, so they haven't played each other, at least from what I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I don't know if we've actually seen the Sableye for John come out with a quick ball or anything like that. So Tord might not even know that John plays it.
Yeah, Tord might not have that knowledge. We see it's in the list because John did hit it in his hand earlier, but yeah, you're right. It didn't get revealed to Tord.
Exactly.
And Snorlax is going to make an impact here, it seems.
Look at that artwork.
To be a Snorlax.
To be a Snorlax napping on a plank of wood there. But yeah, no, Snorlax is definitely a great card in these decks. Just an alternate attacker doing quite a lot of damage as well if you can get those energies. And of course, unlike Tord's deck, John does have that Mirage Gate that is unlocked. It was unlocked at 7 cards in Lost Zone, and John's at 10. But still being able to free attack here with that Cramorant, taking another knockdown and grabbing that boss's orders off of the prize cards, going down to 3 prize cards left for John, and it is up to Tord now to decide who to promote in this position. Definitely a difficult choice.
Definitely a tough call here.
Comfy's coming up.
Comfy's coming up, but he's probably just mapping out the rest of what he's got. I mean, we do know he's down a lot of switching cards, so, I mean, if he doesn't have access to moving the Comfy, maybe Sableye just has to come up to keep swinging the prize cards.
Yeah, that is definitely true. So this is, I guess, a difficult choice here for Tord now, but looking like opting to go with the Comfy into the active after that knockout by John, starting off here, drawing for turn, drawing into a cross switcher. One was already put into the Lost Zone for Tord. There is 4 in deck.
Flower selecting, seeing the top 2, Fog Crystal and a Fire Energy. You really only need 1 Fire Energy to attack with the Charizard, so it's an okay card to lose. It depends on if Tord needs to grab a Psychic Energy out of the deck, and it doesn't look like he does. There are 2 in the Lost Zone, or 2 in the discard pile, 1 in the Lost Zone, so maybe he already has access to another. Maybe just wants to hang on to this Fire as well to try to make sure he has access to it through Charizard.
Yeah, most definitely, and it looks like that Fog Crystal is going to hit the Lost Zone there. So here we go. So many cards in hand for both these players.
Yes, and this is really what happens with these decks. You go flower selecting, Colress, and you're just adding cards to your hand.
Yeah, definitely. Both of these cards just stacking here, stacking giant hands. We are going to see an Escape Rope that is discarded. Was that off of the...
I think that was...
Oh, it's being used. I think John's just deciding who to promote here.
Yeah.
Of course, like we said this entire time. Difficult decisions being made. So Escape Rope, John deciding to promote maybe the Snorlax? Taking it back here? There we go. Promoting the Snorlax, going with it. It does have a water energy attached to it. But yeah, promoting that up here. Now Tord has to decide who to promote afterward, and it looks like it is going to be this Sableye.
He does have the Clara in hand, so that can fetch back the Psychic Energy to fire off a Lost Mine this turn, and he's set up to be able to either knock out the Radiant Greninja or could knock out the Comfy and spread some damage elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely huge. Like I said before, there's 2 Claras in deck, so this is the first one that we've seen so far.
The thing for Tord is that it's actually really difficult to deal with this Snorlax until John has taken enough prize cards to where Charizard is activated, because Snorlax's unfazed fat ability means it cannot be affected by effects of opponents' attacks. And of course, placing damage counters, which is what Sableye does, is an effect of an attack. So Tord could theoretically target Snorlax and say, yeah, I want to put all 12 damage counters here, but then it would get fizzled out because unfazed fat would deny that option.
Yeah, that is definitely a good point to make there, Chip. So we are going to see the manual attach for turn here onto that Sableye, of course, to make sure that Lost Mine can pop off this turn here and place those 12 damage counters on the board. Save for John, of course, not going to be placed on that Snorlax here. So we'll see what the decisions are from Tord with those damage counters. Tons of options in hand still.
I feel like knocking out John's only Comfey in play seems pretty solid. Take that option away so John can't just switch into it or escape rope and send it up,
Radiant Greninja is still locked from that path to the peak as well. So really just disrupting John pretty heavily here with that play for sure.
And then could set up for an easier knockout later on, potentially on the Cramorant, spreading damage with multiple Sableyes in future turns. Tord, though, here is still behind. He's 4-3 prizes right now. He'll tie things up here. Ooh, is actually going to take out the Cramorant, put just one on the Comfey. Wants to make it as hard as possible for John to attack here. Maybe calling the bluff here from John. Sending up the Snorlax almost says, hey, I've got a Mirage Gate in hand. I can pretty easily attack. Actually, I don't think John does have the Mirage Gate.
Wow, that is very true. And look at that retreat cost on that Snorlax too. That is a beefy Snorlax in the active as well. And with no Mirage Gate, it could just be stuck up there in the active with that 4 retreats. I think there is that a...
He's got a rope.
Is that a rope?
Yeah, it has a rope. Also has Ordinary Rod here, which I think is what he's debating playing
there we go.
first. But it will be, I think, the escape rope before anything else.
Right, of course.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, difficult decisions here by both players, but escape rope is going to come down. Of course, Tord has to decide who to promote first before John gets that decision on his end as well. So let's see what Tord decides to do. Again, so many decisions to be made here, Chip, and difficult ones at that. So
yes.
Tord going into the Radiant Charizard is what it looks like. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not.
It does have the most hit points, though pretty much everything that John could throw at it would be able to still knock it out. Snorlax knocks it out. Cramorant even knocks it out thanks to the water weakness.
True. That is definitely a good point there. So going into the Comfey instead, we're going to see now the Ordinary Rod, as we noted before from John. So searching out Pokemon and
double Cramorant
energy to shuffle back into the deck. Yeah, 2 Cramorants going back into the deck, as well as a Psychic Energy and a Water Energy.
So John just needs to attack 3 more times, once of each of these next turns, and Tord needs to not take a multi-prize turn. As long as those things remain true. Oh, and this is huge. Tord's decision to take a prize last turn means that Roxanne has been activated, and this is the only Comfey in play for Tord, the one in the active spot. So if John can find a Mirage Gate and take a knockout with Snorlax, Tord's going to have 2 cards with no flower selecting available.
Yeah, that is definitely huge here. This is going to be giant for what these players draw, what cards they draw off the top. Of course, John being able to draw 6 and Tord only 2 from that Roxanne. So definitely huge. Let's see what the cards are for both these players. Oh, I think it was a Colress is in Tord's hands.
Okay, so Tord will have an out here. John looks like he got into the scoop of net. I do not see the Mirage Gate, though.
No, I don't either. This is close.
I don't think he's used flower selecting. I don't think he used it before the Roxanne. So
there would be a coin, I think,
really
Chip.
could come down to if he finds the Mirage Gate here off this flower selecting. Otherwise, he might miss an attack, which would be the window Tord needed to get back in this. And he doesn't find one.
Oh, yep. That is difficult to see.
He needed to find Cramorant or Mirage Gate, and he found neither of them off of 8 cards effectively.
Oh, my goodness. That is very true with both those cards. So just sending that water energy into the Lost Zone and keeping the other card to hand here.
Does have another Comfey, though, so he can look once more. Has the retreat available, get rid of the Comfey in the active. Is actually going to scoop up net.
Okay.
I think wants to heal that damage, probably.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that is definitely big as well. Healing that damage is huge. All right, so we are going to see another flower selecting. What are the 2 cards?
It's a water energy and something else.
Another water energy?
Oh, and we don't know. It was just, I see the water energy hit the Lost Zone. It looks like it was the Cramorant. But now, oh, John could use the escape rope here. Okay, so he can still get a KO this turn with the Cramorant. So he's at least found the pieces to take a prize now because escape rope is in hand.
Yeah, much better position to be in. Definitely having an attacker. You know, John having shuffled 2 Cramorants back into the deck and now finally drawing into one off of 2 flower selects. So we're going to see this escape rope toward choosing first who to promote here from the bench.
And does choose to send up the Radiant Charizard, even though John will be going to just 2 prizes remaining. That Path to the Peak in play, which I'm sure John is not planning to bump.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Spit Innocently is not affected by weakness. How could I forget? Yeah, even though Charizard is weak to water, Cramorant doesn't care about that. Just dealing the 110, not able to take it out.
I guess it couldn't be as good as we thought it was, Chip. There are some weaknesses, I guess, but definitely not one being recognized. Yeah, right. I was about to say not being recognized here. So toward it, working with a Colress's Experiment now, looking at those 5 top cards, of course, 3 going to the hand and 2 to the Lost Zone. Let's see what we have. I think there's an escape rope in there, a Lost Vacuum. Looks like a fire energy.
Yep, energy is available.
A Scoop Up Net, Fog Crystal.
Okay.
So
this is the opening Tord was hoping for. It is definitely a massive one here. Let's see what he can piece together. Will he be able to get an attack off? He's at least got the way to move the Charizard from the active and can use Lost Mine this turn, taking at least a prize.
Yeah, this is a scary position to be in for either of these players. Tied up now, 3 prize cards each. Still 41 minutes left on our clock here. So we've been running down some time here, but we still have a lot of time left for both these players to finish out some games. So tied up.
A ton of cards in both of these players' Lost Zone, already at 12 apiece.
Can you imagine that 12 of your cards in deck are just gone forever, Chip?
It's pretty wild how this deck functions, but it's what it needs to do in order to make it work.
All right, and 2 more going into the Lost Zone. It was going to be that Lost Vacuum and the Escape Rope as well.
Something interesting here as well, Tord has the switching cart in hand, so he could switch the Charizard to the bench and also at the same time heal it. So that makes it a little more annoying for John to make any sort of Sableye play.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That is a card that's a good tech and fits pretty well in this deck because you're playing a lot of basic Pokemon. So.
I mean, and that math really matters because
it does.
Right now the Charizard has 50 HP and Manaphy and Comfey both have 70, so 50 plus 70, that's 120, which is what the Sableye is able to spread. So healing that 30 damage is going to be massive here if that's what Tord is going to go for. And this really could be a situation of, does Tord know about the Sableye that John plays? So
oh, yeah, true, because I guess
his only way to move it is the switching cart, though, it looks like, and the Scoop Up Net. So either way, this damage will get healed.
The escape rope was put into the Lost Zone anyway. But yeah, I don't know. Also, Tord just potentially not, I guess, preparing for the worst. Oh, just going to Scoop Up Net actually here on that Radiant Zard, get rid of all the damage chips. So that is completely gone off of the board. Of course, that energy having to be discarded from the Scoop Up Net that was on the Radiant Zard. I believe it had energy on it.
It did, yes. Okay. It got discarded.
Okay, cool. So it's
that's
in the
another
discard
fire
pile.
energy already in his
Yeah,
hand.
I was like, wait, what? Okay, we're good. So 2 Sableye set up now here, of course, with the single Psychic Energy. That's all they need, Chip, to, well, that's all they need plus the 10 cards in the Lost Zone. So there's definitely some gives and takes here, but that is a very low energy cost for it to have, and 2 of them are now established on Tord's field.
And if Tord KOs the Comfey here, John's options are going to be pretty limited, and it seems like a pretty easy choice. Get rid of that 70 damage there. He's got 3 more damage counters to play with.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of decisions to be made, but that Comfey is going down.
Cannot put the damage on the Snorlax. It has to go to either Cramorant or Greninja. So it looks like 3 or 5 actually going on to, 5 going on to
Comfey 70.
Yep,
Cram gets 5 damage counters here, of course, equaling to 50 damage.
So I think John's play this turn has to be Sableye, plus Zigzagoon plus Scoop Up Net in order to knock out Manaphy and Comfy. Take 2 prize cards this
That'd be
turn.
huge.
Yes, I think he needs that combination of cards. And Mirage Gate as well is a decent way to set up this Snorlax to take your potential last prize card. Cramorant also would work to close out the game. He's got the Zigzagoon in hand and drew the Scoop Up Net. I don't think he's got the Psychic Energy or the Sableye just yet, though.
Yeah, making the decision of what to send to the Lost Zone off of that Colress's experiment right now for John toward taking a look at that Lost Zone. And then the 2 cards going to there are going to be a Cramorant and a Mirage Gate as well. Of course, I think there was 2 Mirage Gate in those options. So one going to John's hand here, Scoop Up Net in hand, the Goons in hand, Mirage Gate being activated here to search out those 2 energy cards and apply them to the board.
Yeah, going with the Mirage Gate before going with the Sableye, so I guess he's maybe saving Sableye for next turn. That might be what he's eyeing up. I do believe Tord is down all 4 copies of Scoop Up Net, so Manaphy and Comfy will both be in play. So he's just going to make maybe a big push on this final turn to take 2 prizes at once.
Yeah, and that would be quite the shocker, too. It's always interesting to see those plays and to see that knowledge be revealed last second for a huge turn. Sure. That's kind of when you have to do it, too.
Was not able to play, get down another Comfy here, use that Flower Selecting to get through the deck a little bit more.
Yep, definitely. So shuffling up here, those energies put onto that Snorlax on the bench here from the Mirage Gate. Of course, having to be 2 different types of energy cards, but so a whole array of those energies on the Snorlax.
So let's see if John is just going to attack with this Cramorant in the active, take this KO. Could get the damage out of play and just attack with the Snorlax. He does have the Scoop Up Net in hand, but like I said, he may need that Scoop Up Net in order to use the Zigzagoon on the next turn to close out the game. I don't know how many nets there are available. I think there's at least 2 in the discard pile, 1 in hand. Where is the 4th copy is the big question, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. And Tord doesn't play any Rock Sands in the deck either, so that is not going to be an option here from Tord if anyone was thinking about it. It is not in the deck. No room for it, I suppose.
Nope.
All right, here we go. Snorlax is in the active position. All of those energies attached to it needed to do that thumping snore for 180 damage. Plenty of damage.
Yep, plenty of damage, and the only thing in Tord's deck that can deal with Snorlax is the Radiant Charizard. So we know Tord has that back in the hand from the Scoop Up Net. Fire Energy did go to the discard pile, so maybe John just hoping that Tord won't be able to find the fire to deal with this, or maybe Tord's going to just go for the Lost Mine onto the Greninja. Looks like Snorlax will stay asleep, will take this KO. John goes to 2. Tord now at 2. Tord is now the person in the driver's seat of this one.
Yeah, most definitely. That Snorlax sleeping on the plank of wood there. Still,
I believe it's
John.
a bridge.
Is it really?
Yeah, right over a little river, you know.
Thanks for letting me know. What? Oh yeah, because he's blocking it. That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yep.
That's so good.
Ooh, what a good top deck there from Tord as well. Finding the air balloon, sends up the Comfy, gets rewarded right away. Will be able to pivot out. Gets to look at 2 Lost Zone 1.
Yep. Most definitely. I think it was was that another Colress too?
It was.
I feel like Tord has had to make so many Colress potential sacrifices in this game so far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a Comfy. So Comfy being sent to the Lost Zone, that Colress being favored over it. That Battle VIP pass has been in the hand for Tord for so long too.
Still a decent amount of cards in hand there for Tord, or in deck I should say, for Tord. So he wants to thin out a little bit, add some more to the hand, and maybe Lost Zone just a couple more.
Yep, and we are going to see some of that thinning right now. 5 being selected, 2 having to go into the Lost Zone, and 3 to the hand. 2 of them, 2 of the options being switch carts. Comfy's there as well. Looks like a switch cart and a Comfy potentially hitting the Lost Zone there. For Tord, it's going to be the decision made. Again, those switch carts maybe coming into play potentially in the future with kind of getting rid of some of those damage counters and playing around things. So
we're
pretty
coming
important.
down. We're definitely coming down to the wire here. Tord's going to just piece together what he wants to attack with here. I think his path is pretty clear. He knocks out Radiant Greninja with Sableye and knocks out Snorlax with Charizard. It just depends on what order he wants to do these things in.
Yep. Do you think it makes a difference, Chip?
Not particularly. I think that going in with the Charizard here could be a little risky because then John could theoretically buy a turn since Charizard's effect, Combustion Blast, says you can't attack on the next turn, so maybe John could find a way to mess with that. Of course, we know Tord has Switching Cart, but I don't know. It's one of the things you want maybe play around. Does John play, you know, a Marnie, which we do know he has a copy of, so...
Yeah.
That might be something Tord is debating here. Cramorant also an option, maybe in combination with an Escape Rope or something. Bring up that Radiant Greninja. Oh no, it does have just 1 damage counter on it, so wouldn't actually even be able to knock that out.
That is very true. So Air Balloon retreating out of that Comfey in the active position into the Sableye that has the Psychic Energy attached. Of course, looking to use that Lost Mine. Yeah,
going to be KOing the Radiant Greninja here. It's really the only choice because if Tord was to put any damage counters on the Snorlax,
they wouldn't happen,
they would disappear. It would be a wasted attack, so... As long as I'm sure Tord is definitely well aware of that fact, so...
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
He definitely has played against his fair share of these. He will bench the Charizard. I do like this. Put it down just in case of the Marnie from John. Take the knockout.
Powerful.
Could be a big flip here if John could wake up. No, Snorlax stays asleep.
Staying asleep on that Snorlax, of course. Its move...
Thumping Snore,
Thumping Snore making you flip 2 coins instead of 1 on that Pokemon checkup for the sleep. So not
John,
waking up.
John has a chorus. I think that his only way to win this game, I mean, he's looking at the scoop up nets. He's looking at the switch cards. We know Tord has switch card in hand, though. John's just going to check. Maybe there's a win condition of boss's orders bring up Manaphy or Cramorant and just hope that Tord can't move it. That might be what he's counting here. Wants to count exactly what he's got available.
Yeah, this is definitely coming down to these last couple of turns, Chip. It is getting so intense here, John. Nothing else on the board except for this Snorlax that is fast asleep, blocking the bridge.
Yep. Blocking John's path to victory, it seems so far. I mean, I really do think that John's only possible way to win this game involves Sableye plus Galarian Zigzagoon double pinging the 2 Pokemon on the bench, the Comfey and the Manaphy with 70 HP apiece.
Yeah, of course, if we do see that Sableye, which we might. Here's a Quick Ball discarding the Giratina V here now. So let's see if John's going to grab it. It's right there.
But I think John's out of Scoop of Net, so he cannot do the Sableye play.
No.
He cannot do the Zigzagoon play, and also he is out of switching cards. I don't think he can move this Snorlax out of the active.
That makes this whole situation a lot more sticky, Chip. Oh, no.
Yeah, I think that the writing might be on the wall for this one for John Ng. I don't think that there's a realistic path to victory for him. Can go for the Marnie for now, but and I guess he's hoping that Tord, of course, Tord cannot attack. Let's not forget, cannot attack right now with that path to peek and play. He has to find the lost vacuum. So that is really what John's hope is here. Just put this Snorlax up. Hope that eventually you'll flip the double heads, wake up.
Eventually.
And Tord's already got the lost vacuum in hand.
But the Snorlax woke up too. No, there it is. The lost vacuum securing that, of course, taking that path to the peak away for that last prize card that Tord needed, really knocking out that Snorlax with the Radiant Zard there. And that was quite the game,
it really was.
Chip. So many difficult decisions by both of these players, and we are seeing the skill unfold on the table in front of us.
And we can see that one game took 45 minutes of
I'm
the
not
75
surprised,
available.
Chip.
Yes.
I'm really not surprised.
You can see how this is a very grindy matchup. I gotta feel like if John could have worked in that Sableye play, or if he had not missed a KO that turn, the turn that he attacked the Cramorant into the Radiant Charizard, that was definitely the turning point of the game. And that's what Tord needed to happen in order for him to fight back in this one.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I wonder if we're going to see any sort of variation in plays here. I think something to note as well, Chip, is we still never saw the Sableye come out. John never searched it with the Quick Ball, so that is still unknown knowledge potentially that Tord doesn't have from John, and not seeing it the entire game, maybe Tord's thinking, oh, well, maybe it's not in the deck. Like, I mean, it is kind of an interesting tech to have in the Giratina deck. We've seen plenty of Giratina decks that don't play it, so... that is still unknown on Tord's part here, so we could potentially see some lines from John in this next match.
We do have a couple of updates from our other top 8 matches. They have all completed at this point. Zach Kreckler was able to defeat Angel, so that means Zach will move on with his Kyurem deck. Yoshi was able to defeat Osvaldo. Kyurem versus the Hisuian Zoroark. So, Shelby,
here we go.
My pick to take it down. The Hisuian Zoroark has already fallen in top 8. Your pick, Yoshi, hangs on, though. It's actually going to be 2 Kyurems in the top 4. And then Cal Connor was able to defeat Andrew Hendrick, the 1 seed. Cal was the 34-point player who made it into cut. He bubbled in at 8th seed, and now he finds himself in top 4.
Wow, that is huge. I am super happy to hear as well, Chip, that Kyurem, that Yoshi's piloting, making it, and that is awesome. All right, here, let's check out. Oh my God, look at those prize cards, Chip. Whoa.
Double Comfy, Cramorant, and Sableye over on John's side. It is a little lower, so he can likely take it at some point. Tord has prized his Oranguru. That's a card I know he really, really does like. He played it in his Rapid Strike Urshifu deck last season. I know he's a big fan of it. We're going to kick things off with the Fog Crystal, though, as Sableye was the starter. Definitely not ideal, but Fog Crystal could bail him out with a Comfy.
Yeah, most definitely. And, of course, John opting to choose who goes first and second, taking the loss in that first game against these players. So, again, choosing to go second here to pop off with that Cramorant and get the first aggression out of this match as well. So, starting over here on Tord's side, even though Tord went first last time, of course, you can't play a supporter on if you are going first. And we still saw an incredibly strong setup from Tord in the last match between these players. So, we could potentially be seeing more of that from Tord here, depending on what happens, how the flowers select.
Yes, which flowers do you choose, Tord Relev? Going to take a moment now to check through the prize card. Wants to make sure he knows what he has available, at least the important things. That 1 Lost Vacuum being in the prizes, the one of the 2 copies of Marnie, one of the 2 copies of Manaphy as well. All things that he's going to want to note. Yeah,
most definitely 2 switching cards in there, but as we've noted before,
so many switching
cards. There's a lot of switching cards in this deck. So
Tord's not going to be short on mobility, that's for sure.
No,
Speaking of which, I think every card in his hand is literally a mobility card, yes.
All right, and we're going to see that escape rope, of course, John not having to escape into anything because there's nothing there. So we're going to see the flower selection here, flower selecting from Tord, this first one. Trying to get as many cards as possible, as early as possible into this lost zone. So let's see what the options are. It's an Energy and a Sableye.
Yeah, this is tough. Tord definitely was hoping to find a Battle VIP pass, but is unable to do so. So now that's 4 cards in his deck that are going to be unuseful, and his setup is not going to be very useful either.
Yep, and the Sableye is going to hit the Lost Zone. The first card in the Lost Zone, we are going to see the first Scoop Up Net as well. Of course, we saw so many switching cards in the hand for Tord. So we're just going to see the exact same play once again. Scoop Up Net, that Comfy, play it back down, escape rope back into it, and flower select again 2 cards off the top. Look at that, Chip.
Wow.
The Battle VIP pass. Tord getting lucky here with that. That
Expending
is awesome.
a lot of switching cards and does have to lose a Clara, but is able to pull off the Battle VIP pass. The only turn of the game, he's able to play this card, and he'll be able to continue to set up.
Yeah, that is huge. Battle VIP pass being activated, of course, now. Clara going into the Lost Zone for 2 total cards in the Lost Zone now. And let's see what is selected off this Battle VIP pass. I believe that's what happened last time. I think it was the first flower selecting was one of the options was a Battle VIP. So that's why you play 4 copies of it.
Yep, it is one of the most impactful cards in the Pokemon TCG right now. I mean, the difference that starting with this card in your opening hand makes and the outcome of your game is really immense. I mean, it is just so, so important.
Imagine when we lose Quick Ball as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be brutal. All right, so we do see the Comfy and the Manaphy, that very important Manaphy. You know, maybe we forget about it sometimes because it's just kind of chilling on the bench, but it is providing that barrier between being attacked by a lone Greninja.
Yes, and that Tord has prized one of his 2 copies of Manaphy. I mean,
so that's important.
The fact that he's playing 2 Manaphy alone tells you just how good a card like Radiant Greninja is into this deck, and it makes a lot of sense that Tord wants to value bringing this Manaphy out as quickly as possible.
Most definitely. All right, so we are going to see the Air Balloon attached to the active Comfy for that retreat into the Comfy on the bench, and we're going to see another flower selecting, another Battle VIP pass as well, and Tord is opting to select it off of one of these flowers, I suppose you could say, and dumping the switch card into the Lost Zone for a total of 3 now. Playing this Battle VIP Pass, 2 more basic Pokemon being drawn out of the deck here for Tord. Lining up this bench on, of course, our first turn here for Tord. This is very similar to what we saw in the last match of the first turn. Just full bench, you know, energy's out, fully stacked hand as well. Just incredibly strong starts here going first, and we can't see a supporter, and we haven't even gotten this far without a supporter.
And it really does just go to show how powerful this engine is. The Lost Zone being, the Comfies being able to get through the deck, and the strength of Battle VIP Pass really shines through in these type of situations.
Yeah, and you have to think, if John is valuing this strategy without the Girautinas completely and just playing with one prize Pokemon, those are kind of just dead cards in the deck. I guess it makes it a little bit easier when you're having to flower select and choose in that sense. But yeah, that's definitely something to note. All right, here we go. So still continuing on with this turn, we're going to see a switch card into that third Comfy. I believe it's the 4th, though, flower selecting for the turn.
More digging.
More digging here. More flower selecting. We're going to see what Tord opts to keep, and it's going to be that Path to the Peak, opting to send the Lost Vacuum to the Lost Zone and playing that Path to the Peak. So very familiar as well from the last match we saw between these players. Path to the Peak being active, except a little bit earlier this time from Tord. So John is going to be locked from that Radiant Greninja plays even earlier than the last game.
Right. This is definitely. Oh, wow. This.
That hand?
John's hand is terrible, but he had a Luminion to at least get him a supporter.
Not anymore.
But he cannot use Luminion now because of the Path to the Peak. He's going to be very reliant on this flower selecting. Let's see what he can find.
Oh, no. Maybe a Stadium Bump, the training court?
That would be big. It's a Marnie, so that's at least a supporter, but it's not a Colress. So John, by choosing to go second, is banking on the fact that he's going to get off an attack on the first turn. If you're playing a Marnie as opposed to a Colress, it is so much less likely that an attack is coming.
That is definitely true. We're going to start off with a quick ball, again discarding that easy fodder of the Giratina V-Star.
Yeah, really apparent that John does not want to go with Giratina in this matchup. Really totally relying on these single prize Pokemon.
Yeah, you don't want to leave any liabilities on your bench, that is for sure. And that is the strategy John has chosen. So searching through the deck here, of course, selecting a basic Pokemon to do some more selecting of the flowers as well.
More flowers to be picked, selected.
Yeah, not picked, Chip, selected, okay?
Yeah, flower picking.
It's an ability already.
Yeah, it's like a Florges ability from a few years ago.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, so we are going to see an Ultra Ball discarding that Luminia now that was, I guess, useless to this hand currently. And a Psychic Energy for a Cramorant now. So there is the Cramorant, but there's only one card in the Lost Zone. And no Colrus's either. Energy being attached to that Comfy and the Marnie.
Needs to be a very good 5 cards here for John.
Very
he needs to find a way to use flower selecting a lot more times. That is not a bad start, though. The scoop up net, the quick ball, these are all ways that he can use more and more Comfies this turn. I almost wonder if John should have attached the energy to the bench Comfy and hoped to get into a scoop up net so that this active Comfy could be scooped up. You send up the one with the energy on the bench, and then you bench it down. You can retreat.
More.
Right, exactly. Get a little bit more of a pivot around. But it's hard to know that you were going to get into scoop up net specifically, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's definitely a toss-up there that you may not have weighed in on. But if we could see a stadium bump potentially. I mean, John, I think there's only one training court. That's the only stadium in the deck.
And it's in his prizes.
Oh, it's in the prizes?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, so we are not going to see a stadium bump.
Well, he can use Lost Vacuum at some point, theoretically.
That's true, yeah, that's true.
He does find Battle VIP Pass, but it's accompanied by a scoop up net.
Oh,
2 super good cards. This is the one turn John can use the VIP Pass. He does have a net in hand already. He has used his 1 retreat per turn already, so that does complicate things. Both of these Comfies have been used. Oh, if John could find a way to get the Lost Vacuum, that would add another card as well.
There's only 1 copy, and I think that is what John needs to see, honestly, at this point, is the Lost Vacuum.
Yeah, to just get another card in the Lost Zone.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, but also to be able to get that Greninja and actually use it, the Radiant Greninja, off the Path to the Peak, just to see more cards and get more cards in the Lost Zone. It is still possible. I mean, we only need to see 4 cards and some sort of way to switch that Cramorant up to take a knock, which is exactly what John is looking for in this turn. Of course, having opted to go second really needs to not miss this knockout.
And I think he is going to miss it. Yeah, it does seem like it's just a pass, and this puts the ball all the way in toward Reklev's court. It is his match to win at this point. 18 minutes left on the clock. Oh, but his hand is a little awkward here. He does, of course, have flower selecting. Looks like he has 3 psychic energies in his hand, which is definitely pretty awkward to see. I think a couple switching cards as well. Path to the Peak, switch card, and a scoop up net.
Yeah, so no lack of switch cards here for Tord. We are going to see that scoop up net, speaking of switch cards, into another Comfey, and most likely that flower selecting is exactly what we're going to see. Of course, that coin being placed to signify that ability has been used just for easier tracking. If you're like, oh, why are there coins all over the place? That is why. All right, so flower selecting, opting, of course, to keep that scoop up net, such an important card, and the fog crystal is going to hit the Lost Zone, now totaling a 6-card Lost Zone for Tord.
We'll see if Tord can get to 10 cards this turn. He definitely needs to find a Corvus's Experiment to make that happen. Worst case scenario, of course, he can just spit innocently with the Cramorant, still take a prize card. But if he can start putting on pressure with the Sableye, that would be very solid.
Yep, that Battle VIP pass, easy selection there. Lost Zone totaling 7 now for Tord, of course. For that Sableye, we have to get to 10, which is, I guess, still potentially an option here. Of course, we do have another switch card in hand to get into that Comfey for our 3rd flower selecting of this turn for Tord. And let's see if we can hit that Colress.
Yes, looking for Colress. 1 more flower selecting, 2 more cards to see. This will be putting 8 cards in, and no, Shelby, I do not see it.
Yeah, I think that was a Path to the Peak and an Escape Rope, I believe. Yep. Escape Rope being kept in the Path to the Peak, going into the Lost Zone. Of course, the Path to the Peak is already in play right now, and John's only way of bumping that is that single copy of Lost Vacuum from the deck. So may be in play potentially for quite a bit longer, depending on what happens here on John's side. All right, so Tord attaching that Psychic Energy to the Sableye on the bench here, and then Air Balloon retreating into the Cramorant. Of course, there are 8 cards in the Lost Zone, so Cramorant's ability is unlocking that free move, that Spit Innocently for 110 damage.
And Tord takes that first prize card as well in this game. We talked about how the person who attacks first is definitely going to be favored in the match. It was John favored for the majority of that first match, but Tord found a path back in. Now John is going to be the one searching for answers here, trying to figure out a way that he can win this game.
Colress is definitely a way to start, and some easy picks there. Probably that Giratina V, the Battle VIP pass, most likely. There's Escape Rope, 2 energy cards as well, pretty important to keep. So that is what we're going to see hit the Lost Zone for John.
Up to 4 cards. So Cramorant now online, something John was really trying to make happen last turn. Exactly.
Oof. And we are going to see that flower selecting that coin, signifying that ability. Scoop up net, and of course, that V-Star easily hitting that Lost Zone, totaling 5 cards now here for John in the Lost Zone. Our new beautiful mechanic that we've been working with throughout this day 1 and day 2. Lots of cards in hand.
Yeah, a bunch of energies, but a couple switching cards. It's a little awkward, though. Can bring up the Comfey and with a scoop up net and then go with the Cramorant attack. Attaching for turn to Snorlax seems great. It's something that you can take time to power up over the course of a few turns, especially if you're streaming attacks with Cramorant a couple of turns in a row. Bringing it back with things like Ordinary Rod. John does play 2 copies, but 1 is in the prizes, let's not forget.
Yeah, let's not forget those prizes for sure. Those are some important prizes. There's also 4 Pokemon in the prizes, if you all have forgotten, for John as well. 2 Comfeys, that's Sableye and a Cramorant at the top there, too.
Oh, yeah, so the fact that Tord took a KO and a Comfey means that this Comfey in the active spot is
the only Comfey.
Yep, that's his only flower selection.
Oh, no, no, no. The options to select flowers is dwindling down then here for John. And the Comfeys are mid-prize cards, too. So they may not even be taken out of the prize cards.
Not super
either.
quickly,
Yeah,
no.
not quickly, potentially, on how John decides to choose them. We are going to see the escape rope here toward promoting a Comfey from the deck into the active position. And John just taking the knockout on that Comfey with the Spit Innocently that has been unlocked with those Lost Zone cards, activating it and taking the first prize card. Of course, a turn too late.
Yep.
And now it is over to Tord.
And if Tord takes the knockout on Comfey here with the Sableye, that means John's not going to have access to Sableye unless he expends his Ordinary Rod to bring them back into the deck, which usually you want to be using Ordinary Rod to bring back your attackers.
Yeah, most definitely. That is that would be a choice for sure that we could see potentially. All right, here we go. Flower selecting. Putting a Comfey into the Lost Zone, totaling 9 cards now.
Just
in
one
the
more.
Lost Zone. One more that we need to see from Tord, and I think we are potentially going to see it. I don't know. Let's see. Let's look at the hand. Oh yeah, there is a Comfey there.
He's also got Lost Vacuum and Path to the Peak in hand, so he could theoretically Lost Vacuum, bump his own Path to the Peak, and then put a new Path to the Peak in play.
Play another Path to the Peak.
Exactly.
Wow.
Comfey's going to make it a little easier, though. Just one more flower selecting will work.
Yes, we are going to see these 2 cards. What do we have?
Ooh,
is that
tough choices there.
Sableye and a Cram?
That's exactly what it was.
Oh,
2
no.
of Tord's attackers. He has been the aggressor in this match, so losing an attacker is okay.
Yeah, I think there was already one Sableye that was discarded first to the Lost Zone, and now that Cram is hitting the Lost Zone as well. So a couple of Pokemon in the Lost Zone there for Tord. Now totaling 10 cards, though.
Yes.
We have unlocked the potential of the 10 cards in the Lost Zone for Tord here. And we are going to see an escape rope. Of course, John gets to decide first who to promote before Tord gets to promote a Pokemon from the bench.
I think John will just send up the Snorlax here. It seems he did the same thing in game number 1 off of an escape rope. Sent up the Snorlax because it was most likely to withstand a hit. It can't be damaged by the Sableye, but John runs the risk of not finding a way to get the necessary cards in the Lost Zone, not finding Mirage Gate, and then just being stuck with a Snorlax in the active spot, which is something he does not want.
Yeah, and I think maybe deciding because of that, Chip, to promote the Radiant Greninja anyway, instead of that, I should say. The Path to the Peak, of course, is locking that Radiant Greninja down right now, as we've discussed before. So it's just kind of hanging out in the active position now.
Yeah, John's like, you're not letting me use this anyway. Please just KO it.
Just KO it, yeah. Just get rid of it, I guess. I haven't hit the Lost Vacuum, so
nope, it's not happening just yet.
Yeah, definitely not.
The thing is, though, is Tord's not even going to knock it out. John is just sending this up. It's going to absorb a hit or maybe just receive 1 damage count or something like that. I think Tord will almost definitely Lost Mine to KO the Comfey.
Oh, and that's the only Comfey.
And now the question becomes, where do these other 5 damage counters go? At least 1 seems good on the Radiant Greninja, so that if John plays a switch or escape rope, that you can KO it later with a Lost Mine. So I think Tord agrees. Oh, just actually going to be placing 2 there so that you have the option to KO it with Cramorant later as well.
Oh, never mind.
Changing
the mind there. Yeah, just putting all 5. Of course, 5 damage counters equaling 50 damage on that Radiant Greninja now that's in the active position. And now we're back over to John's side of this situation. Chip, what do you think John's options are here?
Well, he's got to get this Greninja out of the active.
Yeah,
He'd like to get 2 more energies into the, 2 more cards into the Lost Zone, so he can maybe use something like Mirage Gate to pull a couple of energies out of the deck.
Yeah, so I'd say probably not the energies. The 2 energies in the
Lost Zone. Starting to attack with this Snorlax as quickly as possible would be pretty good because it is the hardest thing for Tord to deal with. He can't use Radiant Charizard until much later in the game. So if John can find a way to use Snorlax and maybe clear his bench of this Cramorant through something like Scoop Up Net, I mean, there's nothing Tord, can really do to just an active Snorlax.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that's what we're going to be seeing here from John. We're going to see the Scoop Up Net scooping up that Radiant Greninja, so all that damage that was just placed by Tord going away. Of course, Tord knowing that is an option that John has.
Yeah, John's hand's not very good. He doesn't have a Colress. There's not even a Marnie. He's holding on to a Roxanne. And actually something that would be really interesting is if next turn, as John does take a KO here, if next turn, Tord takes a KO on this Cramorant, John is able to send up this Snorlax and then play Roxanne. Limit Tord a bunch, and then put a Pokemon in the active that Tord just does not have an efficient way of dealing with.
Yeah, also John just drew that Ordinary Rod as well out of the prize cards too. So now that being in hand, of course, that single Comfy is still in the discard pile for John as well. But we are going to see the flowers selecting here from Tord.
Going to make sure how many cards he's got in the deck
Yeah.
about. Always want to be mindful of those things. He's got a Fire Energy in hand and one to Lost Zone here, and does decide to take Chorus as well.
Yeah, when so many resources are hitting both your discard pile and your Lost Zone, or yeah, your Lost Zone, it's pretty important to make sure you're not going to deck yourself out at any time soon.
Yes.
All right, here we go. So we are going to see that Chorus's Experiment, top 5 cards here.
Ooh, a lot of supporters.
That is a lot of supporters for sure. And 3 cards are going to have to be selected here from Tord, 2 of them going into the Lost Zone. I think there was a Marnie. I think there's 2 Chorus in there,
Yep.
Cross Switcher and Air Balloon.
Thinking of which ones are most vital for him to keep. He has prized a Marnie, so he might value that Disruption option. It looks like he's chosen that as one to hang on to for now. And is it going to be one of the 2 Chorus? I mean, I think one of the 2 Chorus definitely has to get Lost Zone. The question is just, do you Lost Zone 2 Chorus, or do we lose a Cross Switcher here? And it looks like Cross Switcher is the answer.
Yeah, we didn't see any Cross Switcher plays from Tord. We even saw the early opt to put a Cross Switcher into the Lost Zone in the last match. So yeah, just leaning into that same strategy, sending a Chorus and a Cross Switcher into the Lost Zone for a total of 13 cards now in the Lost Zone for Tord. Of course, not really trying to hit more cards in the Lost Zone, really just trying to get through the deck and select more cards to get into the hand. So we are going to see another flower selecting here. Was that the Scoop Up Net and
the Charizard? Yes.
Oh no.
Definitely a tough call, an annoying one, but I think actually the choice is easy. It's just annoying. You have to keep the Radiant Zard around.
Yeah.
It's your closer. It's one of your most important cards. It's the only way you can really deal with Snorlax. It just is really unfortunate to have to get rid of the Scoop Up Net.
Yep, all right, and we are going to see an escape rope here.
Snorlax comes to the active. Sableye coming into the active now for Tord, which will be able to KO this Cramorant there on the bench. Charizard does come down, and I actually think this is smart from Tord, playing around the potential Roxanne from John's side. He knows that he's going to take a prize this turn, go to 3. John could play Roxanne and then swing with the Snorlax, go to 3 prizes, and then Tord doesn't have an easy way to deal with it. But by benching the Charizard, putting an energy on it, he now is only going to need to find a way to get rid of the Path to the Peak and 1 energy card off of potential Roxanne in order to take a KO on this Snorlax.
All right, so we did see if that Cramorant go down to the Sableye here, taking another prize card for Tord on this side. Now the lone Snorlax in the active position with those 3 energy already attached. We're going to see an Ordinary Rod here from John, selecting 2 Comfy and 2 energy cards to be shuffled back into the deck. Probably going back into the deck here now with the Quick Ball, discarding the Drapion to it to select that Comfy back out of the deck that was just shuffled in with the Ordinary Rod. This is the only Comfy that we are working with here on John's end, so it is a very valuable asset right now to John.
Yeah, definitely one of the more important pieces. John is going to be clinging to this Comfy, hoping it can just hang on, stick around for a little while, buddy, so that I can get some value from this flower selecting ability.
Here's the Roxanne that John is eyeing up right now, and we are going to see it, of course, Tord being available, I guess, now for that Roxanne to happen. With only 3 prize cards left on Tord's side. So both players shuffling their hands into their deck. John still not having revealed that Sableye that was debating whether or not to bench it before the Roxanne, I think before, but now just shuffling it back into the deck. John going to be able to draw 6 cards, and Tord is going to draw 2.
Only 2 cards to work with. Tord does have the Air Balloon on his Comfy, so that will be at least a pretty easy pivot, a little easy of a send up. Ooh, but the Lost Vacuum draw from John could actually be annoying, and it looks like, yeah, will target down that Air Balloon. That is a really big pickup off of the Roxanne.
Yeah, that is huge for sure. So,
and that air balloon that Tord just discarded does need to go to the lost zone, so we'll make sure that that gets sorted out. Not too big of a deal, though. Tord's already way past the point, and the air balloon can't be recovered from the discard pile anyway, but it does need to go to the lost zone.
Yeah, just for the stream, definitely. All right, so the air balloon's now in the lost zone, secured in there. John taking a Comfey out of the prize cards here with that knockout on the Sableye from the Snorlax. Snorlax now sleeping on that bridge for John, and Tord electing to promote another Pokemon, but thinking it through course, of course.
He's drawn into 2 supporters here off of the Roxanne. He's got Colress and Marnie as options.
Wow. All right, so
pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, I was about to say, we'll see what happens here. Which decision Tord goes with it? Gonna be the Colress? Yeah.
Looks like it. So Tord actually needs a bit here. He needs a switching card to move the Comfey. He needs a way to get the Path to Peak out of play, and he needs to get another energy card for his Charizard. And it doesn't look like he's drawn it here. He could also find a way to attack with just a Sableye and take a prize on Comfey this turn. He doesn't have to attack into the Snorlax, so let's see if he has those options available.
Yeah, sending both a Fog Crystal and another Path to the Peak into the Lost Zone here for Tord. We'll see what else. There's 2 cross switchers in hand now for Tord because of that Colress's Experiment as well. And then we are going to see the first flower selecting here, 2 cards. Oh, there's a Fog Crystal. There is a Psychic Energy in hand as well for Tord. So Fog Crystal would be able to search out a Sableye, but is there one available?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, yeah, there's 3.
Both are in the discard pile, and I think there's one in the Lost Zone from early in the game.
Yeah, that was the first card to hit the Lost Zone, actually, so we would have to see
I think John might have successfully bought himself a turn here. Tord has double cross switcher available, so he can dig a little bit more with this Comfey.
Yeah, we would have to see a Clara from Tord to get those Pokemon back into the hands, but of course, Colress's Experiment has already been played for this turn, so we're not going to see that until the next couple of turns. But we are going to see a cross switcher play here.
I wonder if Tord will just go in with the Cramorant. Just wants to take the prize. He could look with the other Comfey, but it might just be worthwhile to take the knockout here.
Especially
make sure you stay up on the prize race, right?
Yeah, definitely. Consistently knocking out these Pokemon is definitely important. So, yeah, and also looking at the deck, how many cards are even left? Because, you know, going through so many. Ooh, actually going into the Comfey, though. So we actually might see another flower selecting ability. That is what we're going to see.
Okay.
So 2 more cards.
2 more cards. There is that Lost Vacuum and a Path. So Path to the Peak could be bumped now from Tord. He has the energy to attack with Charizard, but I don't think he can move the Comfey to the bench with a switching card. He's going to have to retreat, so it won't be... Oh, yeah, doesn't need to attack with Charizard, of course, because Snorlax has hit the bench now, so Cramorant is the option here, able to take out this Comfey, and it's going to be just lone lax on John's side.
Yeah, very familiar to the last game as well between these players. Lone Snorlax, except this time, Chip, that Snorlax is awake now, being moved to the bench and back into the active position, which allows it to attack because it's not sleeping.
5 cards from the top on Colress's Experiment. John is finally going to pass the threshold of 7 cards. Mirage Gate would now be activated, though I am not even sure if he has access to one. And this is a tough call here as well. One of each energy type and the Radiant Greninja.
Yeah, that is definitely a tough one indeed. Look at the difference in the Lost Zones there.
Yes.
John having 8 cards and Tord having 16, double the cards in the Lost Zone. That just shows you kind of the pace that both these players have been working with. Definitely been difficult uphill battle here for John, but 3 prize cards left for John. Tord only sitting at 2. It's going to be a nail biter of a finish, Chip.
Yep. And it is going to come down to it, and time has officially expired. John Eng is going to be turn 0, which means Tord Relev will have turn 1 and 3. John, of course, also having turn 2 available to him. Tord, with only 2 prizes left, I think should be able to close this out before turn 3 ends. Rules get a little wonky when it comes to how things work in single elimination, but for now, we'll just go with the knockout. Thumping Snore KOing that Cramorant. Snorlax staying asleep, snoozing on the job. And does Tord have the response? I do believe that Lost Vacuum still in hand. That is an easy way for Radiant Charizard to come in and take a KO.
Yeah, most definitely. So Going with the Comfy, promoting that into the active position here for Tord. Ooh, top decks the Clara chip.
And that's a big pickup.
That's
He can
a
now
huge pickup.
get access to the Sableye in the discard pile, and it almost feels like the writing would be on the wall if Tord can just get some Sableye in play, maybe use Sableye this turn, attack into one of the Comfies, go ahead and Lost Vacuum, get that Path to the Peak out of there, unless he's worried about maybe John playing his own Path to the Peak, something like that. But, yeah, might want to just hold on to that piece just in case.
Yeah, that was definitely huge. Clara, such a strong card. The Pokemon and the energy drawn off of it out of the discard pile going to your hand instead of into the deck.
And this could actually be pretty good. Use a Rangaroo, put the Clara on top of the deck, and then play the Marnie. Or you could put the Lost Vacuum on top of the deck, play the Marnie, disrupt John a little bit, and then go in with a knockout, maybe with a Sableye. I guess he has to play Clara to get back the Sableye.
Yeah, would have to play the Clara in that sense. But going with the Marnie instead, so both players shuffling their hands, going to put it to the bottom of their decks, Tord drawing 5 cards off of this Marnie, and John drawing 4. So disrupting that hand a little bit on John's side here.
I'm a little interested. Yeah, I'm kind of curious where Tord is going with this. He does draw back into the Lost Vacuum. I guess he does only have a few cards in deck, so he knows that it's pretty likely off the Marnie he can get into it, or off of Flower Selecting he can get into it. He's just trying to thin as much as possible so that he can still attack with his Radiant Charizard this turn. The double Manaphy.
Yeah, 2 Manaphy on the bench now. A full party here, full bench for Tord. A Rangaroo going to use this Primate Wisdom. So Tord did get to see one of the favorite Pokemon being played here with that Primate Wisdom. So switching the top card with a card in hand. Oh.
It looks like it was actually Primate Wisdom and pass over to John. Snorlax did flip double heads and wake up.
Here we go. Snorlax is back awake with that double heads. Maybe Tord hoping that it was just going to stay asleep, but I guess, I don't know. Double heads is flipped for John. 4 energy now attached because of a manual attached for turn, which means that 4 retreat costs is able to retreat this Snorlax onto the bench potentially. Of course, John having access to Mirage Gate now with Lost Zone being at 8 cards. Going to see a Comfy with the Flower Selecting ability here. Oh!
Gonna scoop it up, recognizes he doesn't have a way to close things out. Tord showing, yeah, Lost Vacuum was available to me, and he's got this game locked up. Tord Relev is moving on to top 4 here in Peoria.
Congratulations to Tord and to John Ang coming into this tournament with an impressive 9-0 in our day 1. John Ang showed an incredibly fighting spirit throughout this entire tournament, but just came up short against Tord, one of the most achieved players, I suppose, in this hobby, in this community. So Tord just pulling out that win.
Absolutely.